Welcome back to Let's Talk Careers. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are meeting with Jean-Louis, who is the founder and president of Louis Educational Consulting. Welcome, Jean. How are you today?
Thank you, Maria. I'm good. How about you?
Super excited to have you with me. Jean, we're going to be taking you down multiple paths from where it all began for you to how you made your career choices, where you are today, and then some of your tips for the youth. But before
Okay.
we get into your tips for the youth, let me take you back down memory lane to when you were a younger teenager, around the age of some of the students you might be helping today. I know that you were interested academically in medicine and law, but when did you know the choices that you were going to make, and how did you make those choices?
Well, as a child, when I was growing up, growing in a culture where mostly it's about law, medicine, and engineering. So I grew up with that mindset. Where for me, I wanted to go to law school. So since I grew up outside of the US, and then when I turned in early 20s, so I moved to the United States. So when I went to the United States, the choices were very different because the culture provided a more well-rounded view about work, about employment. And so I started having a different view about the things that I wanted to study. And also, I must admit, though, the academic as well was very important because when I moved to the US, I did not speak English at all because my background is I'm from Haiti. I'm Haitian by origin. So when I moved to the United States, I didn't have to go to high school there because I had already completed my uh, post-secondary education. So I just decided to go to university, but I had to wait. But when I started university, I realized the choices were very different in terms of what a student can study. So you don't have to go to law, medicine, and engineering to have a career. So there were other options. And so I focused on started with political science, where I studied political science as a major. And I realized there was still a path for law school. But again, when I was a student, I started working at the university and I started doing what we call work study student. And then I started helping other students. And so from there, I realized there was something for me because I enjoyed working with other peers, enjoyed working with other students, and at the same time, learning from other professional members that were working in admissions, for instance. And that's where I started my career as a student. Actually, before that, I started working as a helper in the tech department when I went to college. Yeah, I started working in the tech department. Um, and I found that very, you know, gratifying sitting down next to your peer and feel like you're in control. You can help them do something. That was on the computer. And then when I go to a different university, I started working at the admissions office where I work with students when they come in, they had questions I answered, and I kind of like it. And that's perhaps where that shaped my career to working in higher education. And so it is something that I right now I've been in higher education work for over about 20 years now. And so I think this is where I started my career because when I was working as a student, working with others, and I realized, okay, I could do something else. And then after that, once I got to the university where I graduated with my first degree in political science, I started really getting involved with students and working in the administration as well, as recognized my work and hired me full-time staff. So then that's where I really focused. And I said to myself, this is the career choice that I've chosen. But it wasn't that easy though, because as a teenager, as you know, we have so many things in our head that we would like to do. And at the same time, we just don't know exactly what the path should be because we don't have that clear mindset yet.
I really appreciate the way that you took us through that story and some of the ways that you made those choices. What I'm hearing you say was it really became clear to you when you had done that first degree and started gaining those experiences. In the work that you do right now, do you still advocate for students to just go to university and then figure it out? Or do you now see that there could be a better way of helping a young person?
That is a great question because coming from the US and studied at the US, the pathway to education when I went to university was mostly every high school student must go to university because this is the pathway that allows you to have a career, not just a job, just a career that you can have a professional life and then you can live better. But with time and having been doing this work for the longer that I have been, I have also noticed there are students that are not college or university prepared. So we need to think about other ways for the students to also have a life. And so now, having been living here in Switzerland for almost 5 years now, and I'm realizing the system is more focused on helping those students who are not academically able to have a different pathways where they can go to training, they can have a very different pathway than those students who are able and academically prepared. There's no one size fits all because as a parent myself, I really would like my kid to go to university and have that experience where they can have a sharp mind and to think on a critical level. But at the same time, I also recognize some people, it takes longer for them to have that mindset where they have to focus because remember, when we're dealing with teenagers, kids who are 16, 17, they don't like school. Personally, I can tell you, I didn't like school myself. And it involves too much work, too much of your time. And as a young person, you rather spend time having fun with your friends or playing, especially these days with all those Xbox and stuff. Kids spend more time doing that. In fact, I have worked with students who went to university and could not pass their classes because they're spending too much time playing games on campus. And so, yes, I agree with you that it is very important for students, or from my point of view, to have that critical mindset because we need thinkers who can think on a more deeper level for resolving conflicts, for instance, or situations that are very difficult. But at the same time, we need to have people also who are well equipped, well trained, that can do the daily work that some of us cannot do because some people they just have a talent, for instance, to do the work, what we call the blue collar work that white collar people who are thinkers, for instance, who work in very high selective jobs cannot do. So it's when I work with a student, I try to understand the limit of the student, the ability and strengths and weaknesses that the student has. And then I formulate with the student, with the family, what's best for the student because it's college is or university studies is not for everybody. That's what I come to understand along the way of my 20 some years that I've been on the field right now, working with students and supporting students.
So much to talk about just on this one topic, and we
Yes.
definitely need to have a longer conversation. But bringing it back to your journey, I think sometimes we overlook the multiple roles that an individual will play in their particular career. So, for example, Jean, with what you're doing right now, you're an educator, you're supporting young people, but you're also an entrepreneur. And in that role as entrepreneur, what are some of the things that you're doing today with your business that potentially your university degree or maybe your experiences of work prepared you for. And I ask you this question because too often when I'm working with young people, what I recognize is they think that their career is a one-stop shop. It's the one thing that they're going to do, and they either get it right or they get it wrong. And I'm always trying to show them stories of individuals like you who found multiple ways of doing what they're doing, and it's not just one thing. So if you could help a young person understand your current role as an entrepreneur, which also includes your role as an advisor and an educator, how would you be able to do that for us?
That's a great question because as an entrepreneur, it's more about business focus and mindset. And I did not go to business school. And for me, this is something that I'm learning as I go along. And so the one thing that I can tell you, one of the degrees that I went to school for sort of is the backbone. But to be clear, I made that choice to go study that specific field education. I have a master's degree in education. I went back to school after I'd already had gotten my first master's because I felt at that time this is the field that I wanted to focus my work on. I wanted to work with students, and for me to, although at that time I was already been working for 10 years when I went back to school, then I realized this is the field that I want to stay in. So that's why when I work, especially with graduate students, I always suggest that at least test the waters. Try to do work in a field that you feel like you are passionate about, something that you really feel yourself doing. Then go to graduate school, get the academic background to help you better in what you are doing, because there's the theoretical part, because as you know, every jobs that we go for, we have to be trained. Very few jobs that we go, even as professionals, we have to learn what are the ins and outs of that specific company, because every company has a different model that they operate on. As a new person, you have to know what the culture is. So once you know what the culture is, then you have to be trained in how to do business. So as an entrepreneur myself, I learned that there's a lot to learn as you go along. Even if I don't have the business degree, even with the business degree, I think as you engage yourself in starting something new as an entrepreneur, there's a lot you have to learn. Because, for instance, when I first started, I did not have the money to invest for everybody for certain things that you wanted to do. For instance, to create a website, to have a business proposal. All those things takes money if you don't have the skill. So unless you have the skill as an entrepreneur, you have to be almost the realm of everything. So I can tell you what I learned also is some of the skills that I learned while I was at the university. For instance, I told you before that I was working at the lab on campus for computers. So those are the skills that I currently use right now in my role to do some of my work. So I don't have to hire someone to do the work. So the entrepreneurship is you are everything, because you have to think on a broader level on what your goals are, what you set for yourself, what you think your company should be. And all those things, you have to sit down and map them out and have smart goals for those.
I completely agree. I think sometimes the role of an entrepreneur is really underestimated, and there's a big push right now that we're seeing in this trend of increasing awareness for youth to become entrepreneurs. However, I still feel that there's very little information and guidance helping a young person understand the process of being an entrepreneur and what that entails. Just coming to your top 3 career tips. And when I ask my guests to give me their career tips, what I tend to see are some patterns of guests repeating top tips, which is really exciting. So one of your top tips is to identify what you're good at or even what you're curious about learning. And I really appreciate this one because sometimes what we're good at isn't necessarily what we want to do. And sometimes what we're curious at isn't necessarily what we're good at doing. So, how do you help your students identify what they're curious about without getting stuck on whether they're good at it or not?
We have what's called, there's a test that students that allows me to understand their strengths and weaknesses. So from that point onward, I can work with the student. I focus more on this prove by themselves, but the weaknesses are the things that I try to focus on and to help you get better at them, because sometimes the advisor is to allow you to understand that you have certain things that you see as strengths, the things that you can combine with your weaknesses to help you get better. And if you have that confidence with the strengths that you have and understand it's a normal thing for you to not be good at everything, but you can still work your way around that, that helps.
And in your number 2 tip, you say that researching the career to learn more about what exactly people are doing. So, how do you approach that element of research? What are some of your tips for a student that's never done any research? How would you advise them to go about that career research?
Well, career research is something you're interested. You just use simple Google. Helps you to find different the good thing about Google, you not only can read, you can even ask for a video. So the video explains to you step by step the things that the person may be doing. So in my work, what I do, I have a software that allows the student to actually, when they match the subject that they are interested to study, they can automatically see the fields that correspond and the people working in that field, the type of work that they're doing, explaining to them what to expect when they work in that field. So in that sense, I have that covered for my clients. But as a general matter, for a student who's listening right now who doesn't have access to that type of tool or features to help them, you just do a simple Google search. On the simple Google search, you can find a lot of information. And again, like I explained to you before, you can even ask for a video to see the different type of works, how the people work and things like that. That's if you're really interested to know.
And then looking at your number 3, you say, don't listen to someone telling you that you can't do this or that you're not good enough. So when you reflect on your own career journey, did you ever get to a point where somebody said, Jean, I don't think you're making the right choice. You know, this really isn't for you. You can't do this. And if you did, how did you overcome it and find resilience through it?
Resilience is the word. Because we all face with those with this type of challenge where people feel like we can do something. And I think for me, my mom was a very strong lady. She raised me to be very strong person, very resilient. So I do not take no for an answer from somebody who tell me that I cannot do something. So I always try to push myself and challenge myself, because I believe that there's always room for improvement. And so when I work with students, the one thing that I always tell them, do not let somebody tell you you can do anything. And in fact, you can do anything you want so long as you put your mind into it. I usually refer to what we call small goals, so having some specific, measurable, actionable, and realistic, and with timeline that you can cover. Don't set yourself for things that are too wide. Always have small goals that allows you to reach this one, you can finish it, and then you can go to the next one. Because what happens is if you have things that are too wide, you may never reach them. Trying to have things for, like, maybe for this semester or this academic year, I want to finish here. This is where I'm starting. I want to finish there. And then work hard. Because what I'm noticing with my work with students is, like, Having a 14-year-old myself, I see that a lot of the kids, when things get hard, they tend to discourage and then to just drop it. Do not drop it. This is how you gain resilience. This is how you become stronger. You become a better person as well. You know yourself better because of that experience, that you should not be afraid of fail. I don't know about you. I've seen that myself with a lot of the students that I work with. They're so afraid to fail. It's like for them, once they fail, this is the worst thing that can happen. But if that was the case, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs wouldn't be what they are because they failed.
And I think in your role as an entrepreneur, it's probably the same mindset. I think being an adult in anything that we do in life, there is that fear of failure. But again, that's another huge conversation. I think the education system has a lot to do with it. We won't get into that. We won't get into that. But Jean, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you and listening to your stories of your career and some of the insights that you provide your students. If we want to reach out to you, how can we do that?
To reach me, you can send me an email at Louis Educational Consulting at louisedconsulting.com, or you can just do Google search Louis Educational Consulting, or you can just call my main number is 855 or +1 since it's in the US, +1 855 206 8950.
Thank you so much. And that brings us right to the end of another incredible conversation. Today, we were speaking with Jean-Louis, who is the founder and president of Louis Educational Consulting. We talked about his career journey, of how he went from making his career choices to where he is today as the founder and president of Louis Educational Consulting. And Jean shared some of his tips and insights to help the youth on their career journey. If you walk away with anything today, I hope that you will remember Jean's top tip of resilience is the key to your success. Don't let failure stop you from achieving your goals. Thank you for watching, and we will see you at our next Let's Talk Careers with Ms.V.
Thank you.